So today you're going to start off by taking the Socrative. That'll be what I do for your attendance. This video is going to walk you through the SAQ or short answer question writing guide. And then after I walk you through it, you're going to have your first chance to practice the short answer questions and start to see what those look like, just so you know what to expect on your exam. So if we click the SAQ writing guide, the SAQs are part two of your exam. The first part of your exam are the 55 multiple choice questions in 55 minutes. We're going to spend so much time practicing those, but a lot of this exam and most of it is writing. Now, I know great writers that have done terrible on this exam and not so great writers that have done very well. It's all about knowing the history portion of it and using the skills that we're going to practice to go over and write exactly the way that they want you to make sure you're getting as many points out of it as possible. So the SAQ or short answer questions, there's three of them that you have 40 minutes to do, and it counts for 20% of your exam score. So you've got time, take it. The SAQ section is designed to give you enough time to answer all three questions without rushing your answers. You can take about 12 minutes per question, which gives you a few minutes to plan your answers and what you want to write. It's important to know before you're going to write, what you're going to do. Usually when people do poorly, they start writing without a direction or knowing what they want to say, and either have really long kind of rambling answers that don't say anything, or are super short and don't give any specific information. So there's three questions, but really there's nine because each question is three different parts. So each question has three different parts, A, B, and C. These parts are scored separately and count equally in terms of scoring. So the SAQ is out of 9 points. If you get A, B, and C right for all three questions, you get a 9 out of 9. And it doesn't hurt in your responses to have A and then have your answer and then write the letter B, a period, parenthesis, and then write your B answer, just so that's very clear to the person grading it where your answer for each letter ends, because they will be different. So there will be 4 questions, the first 2 being required and the student having a choice between answering question 3 or 4. So there's a bit of an option. If you really don't know 3, write about 4. If you don't know about 4, write about 3, but you have to answer the first 2. So question 1, the first question will cover topics between 1600 and 2001. This question will use secondary sources, which are usually quotes from historians or some type of historical figure. The question will ask you to respond to the historian's argument with specific evidence to back up your point. Skill 2 is going to be some type of primary source. It could be a map, it could be a graph, it could be a picture, it could be, again, another text source. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about these 3 different skills. Causation, comparison, and change or continuity over time is what CCOT means. Causation is cause and effect. Comparison is comparing and contrast, meaning similarities and differences. And change and continuity over time is basically explaining how some type of idea has continued throughout history, or how that idea has changed throughout time. And we'll talk a lot more about these, because these skills are what you're going to write to use the essays for the LEQ and DBQ when we get to that. And then you get to choose question 3 or 4. There will be no source for question 3 or 4. It'll just be a general historical question that you'll have to respond to. There's never just one right answer. There's multiple things you could write about. You just need to be sure that it specifically answers the question. So you can have your choice between something from period 1 or 2 or periods 3 to 4. And again, you just want to answer whatever question that you're more familiar with. These questions will be skill-based, focusing on the skill that was not addressed in question 2. Neither question will have a stimulus, meaning no picture, no text, nothing like that. Both will ask general historical questions directly related to the topics covered in the key concepts, and we go over the key concepts all year. So here are some tips to answering the short answer question. This is not an essay. Do not write an essay. Do not ramble forever. You can complete this in about 3 sentences. 2 is probably a little short, but 3 to 4 sentences is right about where you want to be. It's a series of tasks that can be completed, like I said, by writing about 3 sentences. This is not about right versus wrong answers, but about answers that fit the question and answers that don't. You can write something that is completely factual, but if it doesn't match up to what they're asking, you're not going to get credit for that. The part of the test where you're searching for one single correct answer is over, multiple choice. From now on, there are only 2 types of answers: those that are backed by sound argument and evidence, and those that are not. When you are given options, none of the options will be any more valid or invalid than the other. So if it asks you to talk about whether this document is reliable or why it's not reliable. You can argue both sides. You can argue either side that you want to. Don't do both. And with that, as long as you can use evidence to back it up, you'll get it right. So one person can write, yes, it's reliable. One person can write, no, it's not, and still get it right if they use evidence to actually back up their point that makes sense. It might be about reliability. It might not. I'm just giving you one example. Make sure that you understand what the question is asking and answer the question directly, providing valid evidence and analysis to support your answer. Be direct and to the point. You have to use factual evidence that directly relates to what the question is asking you, as specific as possible. If the question is asking you for effects of the Industrial Revolution, when everybody went from making things by hand to machines, you can offer the person grading it detailed examples of positive and negative effects from it. So you want to make sure that you're specific. Writing complete and complex sentences, again, 2 to 3 sentences. They don't have to be super abrupt. Most successful SAQ answers will use at least half of the space provided, but it's really not about length. It's really about the information that you have inside of it. You should answer the questions in order and label each one with an A, B, or C as it corresponds to the question. Answer what you know. If you have no idea for B, but you know A and C, like just put B and leave it blank, you can still get credit because remember, all 9 answers are separately. And this is going to be done in pen, and I absolutely want you to print. We're not going to do any cursive. So how I have my students remember it, and I use the acronym here, APE. So we said about 3 sentences for your responses. Your first sentence should answer the question directly. Be very specific, to the point, period. Give a specific answer. Next, you need to provide specific factual information that supports that answer. A book and the idea that's in it, a war, a cause, effect, something specific. It has to be something specific in history. It cannot be general. And then your third sentence, explain how this specific factual information supports the answer to the question. So I use that analogy of APE. Answer the question, to the point. Your second sentence provides specific factual information that supports the answer. And the last one, your third sentence, explain how evidence supports the answer to the question. If you need to write 4 or 5 sentences, okay, that's fine. If you write less than 3, I'm going to be a little skepticism, whether you're going to get the point or not. So I'm going to show you a practice one. You're going to write one for A2. Please just don't copy and paste mine. Try to write your own with it, but so you can see how they asked the question and how I responded to it. Now, this would be a question 3 or 4 because you can see that there's no stimulus, there's no picture, there's no text box. It's just a general question that they want you to answer to. So the question is, identify and explain one development from the 14th through 16th centuries that support the idea that this is a distinct period in European history. So I need to come up with one thing that shows that basically the Renaissance was a distinct period in European history. So here's my answer. Again, my first part of it is to answer the question directly. One development, and you can see that I rephrased the question, one development from the 14th to 16th century that shows it is a distinct time period is the development of individualism. Boom, I answered the question. I didn't give any information or anything yet, but I answered the question and says, individualism is what makes this a distinct time period. Now, my next sentence is going to be specific factual information that supports the answer. Humanist writers became more focused on regular individuals, as seen in Petrarch's sonnets, where he writes about his love for a woman that he cannot have, expressing human emotions that many people experience. So this sentence, you can see it's a long one. It's kind of a complex sentence. It goes on for a little bit. Your grammar and spelling is not going to be graded on these as long as they can make out what you're saying. Make sure you write it neat. So you can see I give specific factual information to show that the individualism that I'm talking about. I mentioned Petrarch and his sonnets, and I don't just say, oh, Petrarch's sonnets show this. I explain it shows human emotions that, his love for a woman, human emotions that many people experience. That is specific information. And now I need to explain how the specific evidence I just gave answers the question. So this shows it as a distinct time period because before this, during the Middle Ages, most writings were meant to glorify God, and individuals were considered insignificant and not really written about. So I answer the question, it's individualism. That's what makes it a distinct time period. I give specific factual information. Oh, an example of that individualism here, you can look at Petrarch's sonnets. How do Petrarch's sonnets show it? And then I go in and explain how this time period differed than the one that came before it. So I hope that makes sense. These aren't going to be perfect the first time around, but please follow these steps that I've given you to write good answers. If you go back to my Schoology page, right here, you'll see these 3 questions right here. So identify and explain one development from the 14th to 16th centuries to support the idea it is a distinct time period. The next one, that challenge the idea is a distinct time period. So it's going to be the exact opposite of this. You need to come up with one specific reason to why the 14th to 16th centuries or the Renaissance was not a distinct time period. And the last one, identify and explain one way in which the Northern Renaissance differed from the Italian Renaissance. Good luck. You should have time to be able to finish this about in class time and send me any questions that you have. I'll make sure that I get these graded by this weekend and give you some feedback on how you did. Good luck. And again, as always, message me if you have any questions. Thanks.